Welcome to Next Gen Manufacturing. Today, we're going to dive into something that seems like a tiny detail on a tool, but actually has a massive impact on, well, everything. We're talking about flute count. It might not sound glamorous, but I promise you it's one of those things that can literally make or break a job in modern manufacturing.
So picture this. You're standing right there at the machine, ready to go. You've got two end mills in your hand that look pretty much identical, but here's the thing. One of them is going to cut like a dream, perfect finish, super efficient. The other one, it's going to clog up, start chattering, and maybe even snap right off. So what's the difference? What's the secret?
It all comes down to this one thing, the number of flutes. Yep, those little spiral grooves on the side of the tool, that's the critical factor. But why it's so important? Well, that's where things get really interesting. To really get a handle on flute count, you have to understand this constant battle that's happening within the tool's design. It's this fundamental trade-off, a balancing act between how strong the tool is and how much room it has to get chips out of the way. Think about it like you're digging drainage ditches. If you have fewer flutes, you have these big, wide-open valleys. They're amazing at evacuating a ton of material or chips really fast. But when you dig big ditches, you weaken the ground underneath, right? Same idea here. You get a weaker tool core. Now on the flip side, if you have more flutes, your valleys are smaller. This leaves a much bigger, stronger core, which is great. But those smaller valleys can get choked up with chips real fast if you're not careful. This conflict is at the heart of every single decision about flute count.
So for years and years, decades really, machinists had a very clear, simple set of rules based on this exact trade-off. It was the standard wisdom, and you know what? For the technology they had back then, it worked great.
And this table here, it lays out that classic thinking perfectly. You're cutting something soft, like aluminum, you grab a two-flute end mill, no question. You needed those huge open valleys to clear out those big gummy chips that aluminum makes. But the second you switched over to something hard, like steel, strength became the name of the game. So you'd use a four-flute tool. That gave you a much beefier core to handle the cutting forces, and since steel chips are smaller, the tighter valleys could manage just fine. It was simple, it was logical, and for a very long time that was the law.
But then, everything got turned on its head. The simple, reliable rules that have been the foundation of machining for years were suddenly getting thrown right out the window. A revolution was happening.
And what was driving this revolution? It was a combination of way more advanced, more rigid CNC machines and brand new, super smart tool paths, especially a technique called high-efficiency milling, or HEM. This strategy completely changed the approach. Instead of a heavy cut on the side, you take a lighter side cut but go much deeper, and you can move way faster. This new approach demanded a totally different kind of cutting tool.
You can see the whole story right here on this timeline. We started in that traditional era, where 2 and 4 flutes were just standard. Then we moved into this transitional period where 3 flute tools popped up as this awesome sweet spot for aluminum. But the real game changer was the next-gen era. Suddenly, end mills with 5, 7, or even more flutes became the go-to tools for toughing out hard metals.
And why would you make that jump? Oh, the payoff is just huge. With more cutting edges doing the work, your tool lasts way longer because the wear is spread out. The tool itself is physically stronger because of that bigger core, which means it deflects less, so your parts are more accurate. And all of this leads to the holy grail of machining, higher material removal rates. You're just taking off more metal faster. It's a massive win for productivity.
Okay, so if more flutes are so amazing, the answer is obvious, right? Just use as many as you possibly can. Well, not so fast. The modern reality is a lot more complex. It is all about finding that perfect, delicate balance for your specific job.
You hear this all the time in this shop. More flutes, more feed. It's one of those rules of thumb that just feels right. It makes sense, doesn't it? If you have more cutting edges, you should be able to push the tool faster.
But that simple idea, it's a trap. It's a dangerous and potentially very expensive misconception, because while the logic has some truth to it, you just can't scale it up forever. Believing in this too much is a recipe for a broken tool. So let's look at the reality. Let's say you swap out a 4-flute tool for a 5-flute. That's a 25% increase in the number of flutes. Simple math. But you can't just go and crank your feed rate up by 25%. It doesn't work that way. Because you have those smaller flute valleys and more forces at play, the actual realistic gain you're going to see in your removal rate is probably closer to 10 or 15%. Anything more than that, and you're really pushing your luck.
So, at the end of the day, there's no magic bullet, no single answer.
Success in today's next-gen world is about real optimization. It means you're looking at the tool manufacturer's recommendations, you're understanding the material you're cutting, and you're using these advanced tool paths to find that perfect sweet spot between tool strength, chip evacuation, and raw productivity.
I mean, think about it. We've gone from these simple 2 and 4 flute standards to these incredibly specialized 7 flute, high-performance tools in a pretty short amount of time. It just leaves you with this really fascinating question. As our machines and our software get even smarter, what's next? What does the next generation of cutting tools even look like? And what new levels of performance will they unlock? That, right there, is what makes this stuff so cool.